We spend a massive chunk of our lives relying on technology to just catch our everyday mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. Constantly.
Right, like you type out a quick email, you completely butcher the spelling of a word, and you just naturally expect that little red squiggly line to appear and, save you from looking foolish in front of your boss.
Yeah, or you pull out your phone calculator for a tip at dinner.
Exactly. Because let's be honest, mental math after a long day is tough.
Ah,
And you inherently trust the machine's output over your own tired brain. We just, we offload our cognitive burden to algorithms all day long.
we really do.
But imagine a scenario where the stakes are not a misspelled word or like a $5 tip. Imagine the stakes are life and death.
That changes things completely.
It really does. What happens when both the human and the machine mess up? Or, perhaps even more complicated, what happens when a highly trained human and advanced algorithm look at the exact same critical data and completely disagree? Who do we actually blame?
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you here with us. Yeah, it's a question that is moving from science fiction straight into our courtrooms at an astonishing speed. I'm really glad you're joining us as we explore it today.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the fascinating, sometimes baffling, and completely unintended legal consequences of artificial intelligence entering the doctor's office. Because, we are starting to realize that an AI's opinion doesn't just change a medical diagnosis.
Right, it does way more than that.
Yeah, it actually rewires how we as a society judge human error. And to figure out exactly how this works, we are relying on a single, highly illuminating source today.
And it's a great one.
It really is. It's a study published on May 22, 2025 in the journal NEJM AI. That's volume 2, number 6 for those tracking. The paper is titled Randomized Study of the Impact of AI on Perceived Legal Liability for Radiologists.
Quite a mouthful.
It is. And it was authored by a multidisciplinary team. Michael H. Bernstein, Brian Shepard, Michael A. Bruno, Parker S. Lay, and Grayson L. Baird.
What's fascinating here is that while this is published in a medical journal, it isn't really a study about medicine.
Wait, really?
Yeah, or even about the technical specs of artificial intelligence. It is fundamentally a study about human psychology. It's about the justice system and how everyday people, people exactly like you, the listener, who could easily receive a summons in the mail tomorrow to sit on a malpractice jury, how you naturally calibrate your trust in a growing screen versus your trust in a human professional wearing a white coat.
So to understand how an AI shifts the burden of blame in a courtroom, we first need to look at how these researchers actually tested human judgment.
Right, the methodology.
Exactly. They essentially created a massive mock jury simulation. They took a large pool of adult participants across the United States and had them read what researchers call a vignette.
Which is basically just a short, descriptive scenario.
Yeah, exactly. In this case, the scenario described a radiologist who was actively being sued for malpractice because they, unfortunately, missed a critical abnormality on a patient's medical scan.
And to ensure they weren't just capturing, like, a fluke reaction to a specific disease, the researchers split the participants to test two very distinct medical crises.
Okay, what were the two?
Well, one group, which was about 652 participants, they read a scenario where the radiologist missed a brain bleed.
Okay, terrifying. And the other?
Another similarly sized group, 682 people, read a scenario where the radiologist missed a subtle sign of cancer.
Okay, let's unpack this with a little analogy before we get to the heavy data. Think about using a GPS navigation system in your car.
I love this analogy.
It works so well, right? Let's say you were driving in an unfamiliar city, and you turn down a street that turns out to be a dangerous, active construction zone, and you damage your car.
Total nightmare.
Right. So how do we assign blame? Do we blame you, the driver, more if the GPS was actively warning you not to turn?
Naturally, yeah.
Or, on the flip side, do we blame you less if the GPS screen also showed a perfectly clear road ahead?
Right, if you both messed up.
Exactly. That is the exact dynamic the researchers wanted to test with doctors and AI. To get the answer, they randomly assigned the participants into different conditions, changing only what the AI did.
So let's start by looking at the baseline conditions, because they really set the stage for the psychological trap we're going to discuss. First, we have the AI agree condition.
Yeah.
The mock jurors are told that both The human radiologist and the AI system looked at the image, and both of them missed the pathology.
So a total joint failure.
Exactly. Then second, we have the AI disagree condition.
Oh, this is where it gets spicy.
Very. The human radiologist missed the problem, but the AI system actually found the pathology, and the doctor presumably overrode the machine or just simply ignored its alert.
So that's the GPS screaming at you that there's a construction zone, and you just turn anyway. Yeah.
That is the one, yes. And finally, the researchers included a crucial control group, which was a no AI condition.
Just the old-fashioned way.
Right. In this scenario, the radiologist missed the abnormality, but artificial intelligence was never used at all. It was just a traditional doctor looking at a traditional scan.
And just to be completely clear, aside from those specific variables about the machine, the text of the vignettes was totally identical.
Word for word identical.
The participants read the story and then had to indicate whether they felt the radiologist met their duty of care, which is, the legal standard. This basically served as a proxy for whether the participant would vote to side with the patient suing the doctor or the defense attorney protecting the doctor.
Right, so we have our mock jurors, we have our doctor making a tragic mistake, and the only changing variable is the presence and the opinion of that artificial intelligence.
So what actually happens to the human doctor when a machine catches something they missed? How does the jury react?
Oh, the shift in blame is massive.
Truly. When the AI disagreed with the radiologist, meaning the AI flagged the anomaly but the doctor didn't diagnose it, the participants were significantly more likely to find the human legally liable.
The jump is just quite staggering when you look at the proportions.
Give us the numbers.
So, for the brain bleed scenario, when the AI agreed with the doctor and they both missed it, liability was at 50%. It's essentially a coin toss.
Okay, 50%.
But when the AI disagreed and caught the brain bleed, liability jumped to a whopping 72.9%.
Wow, nearly 3/4.
Right, and we see a similarly massive spike in the cancer scenario, jumping from 63.5% when the AI missed it to 78.7% wanting to hold the doctor accountable when the AI caught it.
But hold on, because there's a comparison here that I think is, well, it's probably the most alarming part of the entire study.
The control group comparison.
Exactly. What happens when we compare the scenario where the AI disagrees with the doctor to the control group where there is no AI at all?
Yeah.
Is the doctor better off just unplugging machine entirely?
Statistically, yes.
Wait, seriously?
Yes. Having an AI in the room that disagrees with you is vastly worse for your legal defense than simply making a mistake on your own.
That's wild.
If you look at the brain bleed case, a doctor practicing without any AI faced liability from 56.3% of jurors.
Okay.
But bringing the AI into the mix and having it disagree with the human judgment pushed that liability up to 72.9%. And for cancer, no AI was 65.2%, but AI disagree spiked to 78.7%.
This feels like an impossible trap for the medical field. I mean, if I am a hospital administrator, I'm looking at this data and thinking, why on earth would I spend millions of dollars to install this diagnostic AI?
It's a fair question.
Right. If simply having it in the room and having a doctor use their human judgment to disagree with this output makes my staff look vastly more negligent in front of a jury, the technology is a massive legal liability.
It creates a profound paradox, but it perfectly illustrates a psychological phenomenon known as automation bias.
Automation bias.
Exactly. Subconsciously, the general public tends to view a computer program as an objective, flawless observer. And at the same time, they view the human being as inherently flawed, or tired, or distracted.
Wow, yeah.
So when a machine and a human look at the same data and reach different conclusions, the jury instinctively assigns ego to the human.
They assume the doctor's just being arrogant.
They assume the doctor thought they knew better than the shiny, expensive computer. Even though anyone who works in tech knows that algorithms hallucinate, they make errors, they are trained on biased data, the layperson on a jury doesn't see any of that.
They just see a perfect robot.
Right. If the machine's dissenting voice is on the record, the mock juror views the doctor's action not as an understandable medical misjudgment, but as gross negligence. The presence of the machine removes the human doctor's benefit of the doubt.
It's like people assume the AI is a perfect safety net, and if you fall through that net, the jury assumes you must have intentionally cut the ropes.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, but this is terrifying for doctors. If just having an AI running in the background makes them a giant target for a lawsuit the moment they use their medical degree to disagree with it, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Can a defense attorney do anything to protect their client in that situation?
Well, that exact dilemma is what led the researchers to introduce a plot twist into their experiment.
Oh, love a plot twist.
They wanted to know, Can we educate a jury out of their automation bias? They decided to test if providing extra context about the machine's flaws could act as a cure for this overwhelming human blame.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Wait, let me make sure I'm following.
Right.
So they ran the experiment again, but this time they told the mock jurors that the AI isn't actually a magic oracle.
Exactly. They introduced two very specific statistical metrics into the vignettes for some of the participants. The first metric is the false discovery rate, or the FDR.
Okay.
In this condition, the jurors are told the AI has a massive 50% false discovery rate.
I always get these terms tangled up. Break down the false discovery rate for me. What does that 50% actually mean in a hospital setting?
It means that half the time the AI raises a red flag and says, I found a problem, it is crying wolf.
Oh, wow. Half the time.
Half the time. It is an overly sensitive system throwing a false alarm. Then, the second metric they tested was the false omission rate, or the FOR.
That was what percentage?
In this condition, jurors were told the AI has a 1% false omission rate.
And the false omission rate means what exactly?
It means that if the AI gives the patient a clean bill of health and says there is nothing wrong, you can trust that silence 99% of the time.
Okay, so it very rarely misses something that is actually there.
Precisely.
Okay, so the FDR is the boy who cried wolf, and the FOR is the highly reliable all-clear signal.
Right.
So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a juror looking at that brain bleed case. Originally, when they were just told the AI disagreed with the doctor, liability was at that massive 72.9% mark.
They wanted the doctor's license.
Yeah. But what happened when the defense attorney, or in this case the vignette, added a single sentence explaining that this specific AI has a 50% false discovery rate?
The jurors' likelihood to blame the doctor plummeted. It dropped from 72.9% all the way down to 48.8%.
That is a huge drop.
The intervention worked beautifully.
I mean, imagine you are sitting in that jury box. The plaintiff's lawyer is shouting that the doctor arrogantly ignored the multi-million-dollar computer. But then the defense shows you the math. This computer is wrong. Half the time it speaks up.
Your sympathy instantly shifts back to the human, doesn't it?
It really does.
If we connect it to the bigger picture, it's because the statistical context introduces a concept called alert fatigue.
Alert fatigue?
Yeah, we all experience this on a micro level with our smartphones. If an app sends you a notification every 10 minutes and 90% of them are useless, you stop looking at them.
Right, you just swipe them away.
Exactly. Now imagine being a radiologist looking at hundreds of scans a day. If a machine screams brain bleed 50 times a shift, and it is wrong 25 of those times, the jury suddenly recognizes that a perfectly reasonable, highly competent doctor might dismiss that 26th alert.
It changes the entire narrative.
It completely shifts the legal concept of the duty of care.
Because the doctor isn't an arrogant cowboy ignoring the rules. They are a professional trying to do their job while a fire alarm constantly malfunctions in the background. You can't blame someone for ignoring a car alarm that goes off every time the wind blows.
Exactly. The statistics successfully recalibrated the mock jurors' expectations of the human professional. It provided a rational framework for understanding the doctor's decision-making process. The context of the machine's flaws basically became a shield for the human's liability.
Okay, so problem solved. Statistical context is the magic bullet. You just explain the false alarm rate to the jury, and the doctor gets a fair trial. Except, and here's where my mind just completely short-circuited reading this study. This statistical shield worked wonders for mitigating blame in the brain bleed scenario. But human psychology is messy. When the researchers looked at the data for the cancer vignettes, the magic bullet vanished.
It vanished entirely. This is where the neat, logical conclusions of mathematical probability just violently crash into the reality of human emotion.
So true.
Providing that boy who cried wolf context yielded statistically significant drops in liability for the brain bleed, but it completely failed to change minds in the cancer scenarios.
Let me highlight just how wild this discrepancy is. In the cancer case, giving mock jurors the context of the 50% false discovery rate only dropped the doctor's liability from 78.7% to 73.1%.
Very barely a dent.
And giving the FOR context dropped it from 63.5% to 56.4%. The researchers note that neither of these were statistically significant drops. The intervention basically failed.
It did.
The jury heard that the machine was wrong half the time, and they just did not care.
They absolutely ignored the math.
But mathematically, a 50% false alarm rate is exactly the same, 50%, whether we are talking about a ruptured blood vessel in the brain or a malignant tumor.
Mathematically, yes.
A coin flip is a coin flip. Why does the jury's ability to process statistics just evaporate the moment the word cancer is printed on the page?
Because certain words are not just medical diagnoses, they're cultural boogeymen. And cancer is perhaps at the very top of that
Yeah,
list.
that makes sense.
It carries immense emotional weight, deep societal dread, and just this element of existential fear. When the listener, acting as a mock juror, reads the word cancer, they aren't evaluating math anymore. They are evaluating their own mortality.
Wow. So you are saying that fear just overrides logic.
Yes, think about the nature of the two conditions. A brain bleed is acute, it is sudden, it is viewed almost as a mechanical failure of the body like a pipe burst.
Right, a sudden emergency.
But cancer, however, is perceived as an insidious creeping enemy. It is something that grows secretly. When evaluating the cancer scenario, the mock juror operates heavily on hindsight bias.
Hindsight bias. Meaning they already know the patient ended up having cancer by the time the lawsuit happens.
Precisely. They know the terrible outcome. And because cancer is so feared, they feel that if the machine even whispered the possibility of a tumor, even if they are explicitly told the machine is wrong half the time, they think the doctor should have stopped everything.
They operate on the feeling of, like, if the machine said cancer, the doctor should have double-checked no matter how often the machine is wrong.
Exactly. They feel the doctor should have ordered 10 more tests, done a biopsy, kept the patient in the hospital for a week.
This reminds me of airport security. We all know that the metal detector goes off 90% of the time because someone forgot to take off their belt or, like, left a foil wrapper in their pocket.
Right, a massive false discovery rate.
Yes, but because the threat of a weapon on an airplane is so terrifying, we happily accept the inconvenience of the pat-down anyway. We want the TSA agents to treat every single beep as a life-or-death scenario.
That is an excellent way to frame it. The sheer terror associated with the threat overrides the inconvenience of the false alarm. In the courtroom, the mock jurors demand absolute perfection from the doctor, regardless of the statistical noise, because the alternative, missing cancer, is just too horrifying to accept.
It is so deeply irrationally human. If it's cancer, you don't care if the fire alarm is broken. You want the doctor to grab a hose and start spraying water just in case.
Exactly. And from a legal and medical standpoint, that behavior from a jury is deeply concerning. It implies that no matter how much you educate the public on the technical realities, the flaws, and the specific error rates of artificial intelligence, their baseline emotional prejudices about certain diseases will ultimately dictate their verdict.
Math cannot always defeat fear.
No, it can't.
So what does this all mean? We've explored the mock jury setups. We've seen how wildly blame shifts when a machine disagrees with a human. We've untangled the error rates, and we've hit the emotional brick wall of the cancer anomaly.
A lot of ground covered.
Definitely. If we synthesize all these takeaways, this study proves that as AI enters patient care, it isn't just changing medicine. It is radically altering the psychological landscape of blame and courtroom proceedings.
And that is the crucial takeaway for you, the listener.
Yeah.
The next time you read a headline about an AI medical miracle, or if you ever find yourself sitting on a jury for a malpractice suit, remember these numbers. You have to ask not just what the AI said, but what its false discovery rate is. Because as we've seen, context changes culpability.
It really is the difference between condemning a doctor as negligent versus recognizing them as a professional trying to navigate a flawed, noisy technological landscape.
It reframes the entire concept of human error.
It does. It leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought to ponder on your own. We just spent this entire deep dive discussing how teaching a jury about an AI's 50% error rate can save a doctor today by providing much-needed context.
Right, proving the machine isn't perfect.
Exactly. But technology is moving at light speed. What happens 5 years from now when the AI's error rate drops from 50% to near zero?
Oh, that's the real question.
Right. At that point, if the machine is statistically near perfect, does human medical judgment become legally obsolete entirely? Will we reach a point where it is legally indefensible for a human being to ever disagree with a computer?
It really forces us to ask how long human agency can survive in an increasingly automated world.
It truly does. That is definitely something to mull over the next time your GPS tells you to turn and you think you know a better route. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the messy intersection of technology, law, and human nature. We will catch you next time.